Hello, rodeo fans, and welcome to episode 17 of the short round. I'm your host, Wacey Anderson, once again joined by my buddy Clay Creasy. Clay, it's the most wonderful time of year starting to wind down. It's a little bit slower on the CPRA side of things, but we got the big show happening in Calgary and lots of stuff on the go. So it's been a good run. But we had Benalto wrap up last weekend, and we got what's going on? Bowden and TP Creek on the SMS Pro Tour heading our way this weekend, and it's yeah, the end is in sight for Cowboy Christmas.
For sure. I got thinking about it, and really, like, when you're going into Panoka, it's like your year has been climbing the mountain.
Yeah.
And now we're at the summit. We've reached the summit, and we're now on the descension on the way back down towards, again, the Canadian finals. So it's
Yeah.
that race downhill, right? Where you gotta keep things in order.
Yeah, and it's the CFR picture starting to become a little bit more clear of who's going to be the top dogs heading into Edmonton, who are kind of going to be the ones battling it out for the final few spots. But yeah, it's cool to see some big money won over the last couple of weeks.
For sure. I mean, it's still there's still so much money to be won that, as
Hmm.
much as it might seem really clear, somebody that's sitting really high right now, I mean, if things go cold, because they can,
Yeah,
then they might go from third to just holding on, or on the outside by the end of it's, yeah, there's still a lot
yeah.
of tour rodeos and lots to be won.
There's no room to take the foot off the pedal if you're one of the guys, kind of, or guys or gals sitting at the top. But it also means there's opportunity for those who may be on the outside looking in to get their way into the CFR. So it's going to be an exciting finish to the season now that we're officially in the second half of the Canadian Pro Rodeo season. But let's jump into some results from last weekend in Benalto. Clay. We had in the bareback riding, Straubs Jones picked up a big check with an 84.5 point ride on C5 Rodeo's Bobcats. Is that, I'm reading that right?
I copied it from
Yeah,
the results, and I think
makes
maybe they
sense.
got updated, so it could be Bobcat.
All the same.
Yeah, no, for sure. I saw that ride, and he made a really good ride there. And again, he's also I checked the results down at the NFR Open, and he's one of the few Canadians we've had that's made it from the first pool there on to the next pool, because I
Oh,
believe they
nice.
take the top six. He ended up second in one round, third in another, and
Perfect.
our Panoka Stampede champ Weston Timberman had won both rounds in Pool A there. So we got yeah,
Making some
but
moves down south. Yeah.
Yeah, Straub's our adopted Canadian. He's a
Yeah.
heck of a guy, and
He seems to be
good
really
on him.
coming into his own over the past like couple of years. Like when he first kind of came on the scene, you could see that he had some raw talent there, but now he's like settling in. He's getting used to the big strong horses up here, and he's become one of our top guys.
Yeah, for sure. He's definitely learned a lot over the years, and just fine-tuned his craft to definitely be one that definitely always has a chance when he gets the right horse, for sure.
Right on. Well, and that's going to move into the steer wrestling. Colton Crawford. That's a name I haven't seen pop up in the results a whole lot this year. Maybe I'm not looking that close, but big win for him. 3.8 seconds to pick up just shy of 3 grand. And you have a good note here that he's within 3 grand of the top 12 now. So it kind of goes to our conversation leading into this that there's still a chance for a guy like Colton to make his way to Edmonton.
For sure. Yeah, I was looking back with everybody over these last couple of weekends to see what else they had done, and couldn't really find much for that, but he still has over 8,001 in the standings. So there's definitely been some stuff there, and he's one of those guys that bulldogs well. He just, you got to get the right steers at the right time, and put it all together, and he very well could get on a roll there and get going.
Yeah, moving on. Ladies breakaway roping. Kylie Whiteside, a familiar face. 2 seconds flat to pick up the win at the Benalto Stampede. That's a quick run, quick. But I feel like the more breakaway roping I'm watching, the faster and faster it's getting. I was at the Rocky Mountain Cup here in Calgary, and that was an outstanding night of breakaway roping. So it's cool to see it kind of just across the board being quick, quick, quick.
Oh, for sure. It's tough out there. And again, you might look at Benalto and say, "Oh, it's not that big of a
Mhm.
rodeo compared to some." But again, $2,000 to win the rodeo, and get those nice buckles they have. And I mean, right now she's sitting ninth in the standings. That went a long way, and
Mhm,
kind of moved
mhm.
her ahead of a few people, and helps out for sure.
And every dollar counts, man. Like and whether now it's with the like trying to win the year end title or trying to make the CFR or trying to win a Canadian title at the end of the year. Like you need to have as many dollars as you can.
Oh, for sure. The year I made the finals, I scraped in 12th and didn't make that finals they had in Calgary at the time. And
Hmm.
if I wouldn't have placed at McCord Rodeo the last weekend of the year with just a little check, I was one guy getting one higher placing at Calgary out of bumping me out.
Wow.
So it can just be just
That's vital.
pennies.
Yeah, it's crazy. So exciting stuff as we move along here. Hunter Solly, big ride for him, 87.5 points on C5 Rodeo's Hoochie Mama. So Hunter Solly's making some big moves, making some good rides.
Yeah, he's still a ways back, and gosh, that bronc riding is just so
Oh
tough.
my God. This has
I
got to be the
mean,
toughest year, don't you think?
it's yeah, there's so much more money with those bronc ridings in and
Hmm.
everything. So I mean, right now you've got like what they're at in the finals for 12th spot is what guys sometimes made the N or the
Hmm.
CFR with. So I mean, it's 13,000 or whatever just to be in that top 12 at the moment, and Hunter's a little ways back, but again, he made a great ride to win Fort McLeod here. He again made another good ride, and he's just a guy. He just takes care of business. He doesn't worry
Hmm.
about a lot. Just keeps it simple, keeps his hat down, and lifts on that rein and rides real well. So I imagine he's going to keep climbing all the rest of the year.
It'll be good. It'll be interesting to see who battles it out for those final few spots because we got a kind of like a good group of young guys who are finding their way, like a Nick Patterson, like Hunter, like Sawyer Erickson, like some guys who are like finding like Chris, like I said, finding their way, but who could like make a really good push to get into the CFR this year.
For sure. Like there's a lot of big names that are on the outside right now because
Hmm.
those young guys have just fought their way right in there. I mean,
Hmm.
Nicholas and Sawyer, I think, are on the inside and yeah, it's just a dogfight.
Yeah, oh, it'll be fun to watch for sure. Tie down rope and Logan Bird. Good to see him get on the board with an 8 second flat run. Pick up again just shy of 3 grand and another win for Logan Bird. Another buckle for the trophy room.
For sure. And like this stretch of time when they've got all the stock at Calgary and everything, it's to fit in a trip up to Benalto there because he was up in that first pool as well in
Mhm.
Calgary and popped up there, win the rodeo. I mean, he's been making some money. He's sitting second in Canada right now. It's
Mhm.
behind Haven Medjid, who obviously had that huge Pinoca, but he's again just so consistent and just works so hard at it and again wins Fort McLeod, had a good showing in Williams Lake as well. Just keeps roping him and Peso. Just they
Keep on
making Peso.
rolling. Yeah,
Yeah.
keep making pesos. I like that. The barrel racing reigning Canadian champ Lynette Broadway, 16.52 seconds. She also won Williams Lake, that you have noted there. So Lynette's starting to roll. So watch out for her in the back half of the season here.
For sure. Again, she's sitting second in Canada as well. I mean, just she's just a consistent horsewoman. She just knows what she's doing. She's just really come into her own and
Sorry.
really been
Sorry, I just mid sentence sneeze. I was trying not to.
it's
Anyways,
all
continue
good.
on. Her and Cal
Yeah,
were so
but
solid, man.
yeah, she's just a top-notch competitor there and really just has had got it figured out these last couple of years
Yeah.
again. Just tough to beat.
Okay, bull riding Coy Robbins. Big win for him, 85.5 points. Coy's a guy who's kind of been a little bit inconsistent this year, I think to his standards, but always a guy a threat to win, but good to see him get one down in Benalto.
For sure. Yeah, I know he had a little bit of tough luck there at Calgary and nobody's harder on themselves than Coy. I mean,
Hmm.
he approaches the sport with such professionalism. He takes
Hmm.
care of himself so well. I mean, I've known Coy since he was a steer rider and he's just always just a guy you cheer for because
Hmm.
he puts in the work. He's just he puts just so much into it, but he's a good guy.
Yeah,
And I
great
just
guy.
you just hope he keeps going. I love the bull's name, Nacho.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah,
Coy's one of those guys I think he's knocking on the door for a Canadian title, so it would be really good to see him kind of because he had such a great season last year. He's having a good season again this year, but I think just I think for him, there's so much pressure to get that Canadian title that it's only a matter of time for Coy. Um,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, bull riders, you just never know. I mean,
mhm.
for Coy, it almost seemed like early in his career that injuries were going to prevent him
Yeah,
from really succeeding before he even got his chance. And I'm so glad to see that he was able to persevere through that and get to where he is today. So it's
yeah, it's
wherever his
awesome.
career goes, you can be proud of what he's done for sure.
100% for sure. Okay, the novice events we got I think he's the still the number one in Canada novice bareback, Jace Lomheim, 77 points. Devin Hay, the youngest of the Hay boys, got 72.5 points to win another event on his side of the coin. And then finally, Brody Beasley in the junior steer riding 75.5 points. That kid is tough to beat.
For sure. And I just wanted to point out, I saw Devin was sitting fourth, but geez, there's only $78 right now between
Mhm.
third and fifth in that novice. But it's tough to say what the actual standings are because they had implemented a rule here a couple of years ago that allows the novice bronc riders and bareback riders to transfer money from the open bareback and bronc riding events at some of the semi-pro rodeo associations around.
Oh,
So
okay.
sometimes there's a bit of a lag in that coming into
Yeah.
the standings. So it can really kind of change things, especially when it's that tight. I saw that Devin, I think, had just won one of the CCA rodeos here the other day, and those guys are just rodeoing up and down. So
Mhm.
it'll be interesting to see how that kind of shakes out once that money gets added there. But it's yeah, no, again, another good showing there. And I just wanted to also point out the team roping winners
Oh,
from Benalto there.
dang. Yeah, sorry, I skipped right over that.
It's all right. The page breaks sometimes there, and again
No, they're
another
good.
another top notch team that's been really giving her this year. Levi Simpson and Logan Cullen.
Hmm.
They again another Williams Lake winner there. They're both sitting eighth in the standings here, and again just roping so solid. It's been just looking at the top four there. It's a bunch of guys that have been winning a bunch up and down north and south of the
Yeah.
border. So those
No.
those team roping events are tough right now.
Yeah, it's good to see for sure. All right, Clay, I think that's gonna do it for the top half here. We yeah, wrapped up Benalto. We got a fun interview with Jimmy Lawrence, one of the Canadian Pro Rodeo Hall of Famer and a legend of our sport. I had a chance to sit down with him in Ponoka, so I'm really excited for that. And we'll yeah, we'll catch you on the other side. Welcome back to the Short Round Podcast. I'm pleased to be joined by Pro Rodeo Canada Hall of Famer, Stock Contractor, and just a legend in the rodeo world, Jimmy Lawrence. Thanks for joining me today, Jimmy. It's gonna be fun to sit down and chat about some rodeo stories.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I kind of want to. We had a lot to talk about, but I kind of want to start with your rodeo career. Obviously, grew up in Saskatchewan. You qualified with the CFR a bunch of times and kind of traveled around in that legendary era of bull riding and rodeo in Canada and the U.S. Got to compete alongside some of the greats, and yourself being one of them. But let's get into your career. How'd you get started? How where did it all begin for you?
No, I grew up around rodeo when I was a kid, and
Hmm.
and my dad was involved working behind the chutes for a contractor and did a little picking up. And my mom barrel raced a little bit and goat tied and that kind of stuff. And so we were always around it, and I can always remember as a kid looking in the arena and just like can't wait till it's my turn, kind of that deal.
Yeah.
Had that, and we were always riding horse, kids riding horses and that kind of. We always wanted to be cowboys. And
Was it always bull riding that you were attracted to, or was it just
no,
rodeo in
no,
general? And
I think it was essentially. I remember wanting to be a bareback or bronc rider
yeah.
more than, and then I got to riding steers and cows and what have
Hmm.
you, and it was a natural progression. Easier, way easier to have a practice session, right?
100%,
Didn't
yeah.
have to pick up men and da da da. But
I mean, that's a little bit less of a learning curve in a sense, right? Like I always found like seeing guys saddle bronc riders specifically like kind of moving through it seems like such a steeper learning curve than say like bull riding or maybe bareback riding's not the same, but just from my eye test looks like the horse riding events definitely are much harder to perfect.
yeah, no, I think that's true, and I dabbled in it all
Hmm.
for sure, and uh, and Dad's connections with the rodeo. He had a few horses around that we bucked with the guy, and
Right.
so we had, and then we got into the PMU business with the the pregnant mare urine and having a lot of brood mares,
Mhm.
and some of them were a little bit bronky, and we still played around with it a bit, and but the natural progression for me was to just go to bulls,
Mhm.
and I was fortunate where I started making money in it, so that was a pretty big deal because
Did you find success right away, or did it click right away and you started doing well like at the CCA amateur level, or did it
I
take some
was
time to?
I was a pretty late bloomer,
Mhm.
really. Essentially, I just kind of we're not far from
Right.
Manitoba, and there was the Manitoba circuit. And looking back on it, it's probably really good for me because we went to a lot of the Manitoba rodeos, um, and the contractor there just had a lot of nice bulls to get
Mhm.
on, like nothing rank, and it was ones that would buck you off
Mhm.
if you didn't do things right.
Right.
But we went through all of that and never got hurt or whatever. It was a real good,
Good learning experience.
yeah, a good stepping stone for sure.
Yeah. And
And then,
what was it like when you went pro then? Like, when did you make that decision? Was it you mentioned being a late
in the
bloomer?
winter of, well, I should say in the year of '79 is the year I took my first CCA card.
Okay.
And I only went to a handful of rodeos, and I made good buddies with a guy named Kim Gale,
Okay.
and he rode barebacks and bulls. And then we both started riding bulls quite a bit, and we made this crazy idea to go to Texas for the winter.
Oh,
He
nice.
knew a guy down there that
Yeah.
he met
Yeah.
at a horseshoeing school, and he said, "If you ever want to come down, y'all just come." So we went,
Dang.
and we worked for a contractor down there to get on bulls for
Mhm.
free, and that changed things for me.
Yeah. No
You
doubt.
know,
Yeah.
we got on a lot. Before that, we were going to Barry Qualms to get on bulls, but
Right.
it was, it's always cold, whatever. So we spent 4 months down in Texas riding bulls all
Dang.
winter. Come back, made the CCA finals, and then the next year made them again, and still had no aspirations of really being a pro.
Really?
It was kind of like the guys that I met in the CCA that were all turning pro. They're
Yeah.
all like, "You got to come with us."
Yeah. No choice, eh?
Yeah, they just think you got to come with us and talk to some of them veterans, like
Mhm.
Bob Robertson, who was my idol and
Right.
mentor, and asked him about it, and he said, "Well, you've only got so many miles in you, and
Right.
you're riding good enough, and you got to always pay the dues, right?
Right.
In the rodeo world, seems
Mhm.
like." So he said, "You might as well get at her," and
Start paying them. Damn.
yeah,
Well, I was at a time when a lot of rodeos were getting like 70, 60 bull riders a rodeo enter, right? So it
yeah.
wasn't an easy, and a lot of really good bull riders. So it wasn't an easy way to kind of pay those dues.
No, no, it was in that era, as you say, like there was a lot of bull riders, and I think when we got into the pros, maybe it wasn't the numbers went down. There was just a lot of the rodeos had more performances.
Right. Okay.
But when we were in the CCA, there nothing to beat 20 guys in the slot.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and then yeah, it was a step up to go into the pros. Just that different
Just everything.
environment and
Yeah.
different, your guys you've seen on TV or heard about and read
Right.
about. All of a sudden you're competing against them. It was, it was really, really exciting.
Well, and then you come to like big iconic rodeos like the Pinocos of the world, whatever. There's just different energy about being in those big arenas and those big moments. So you mentioned Bob Robertson. Like, how influential was he in you finding your feet at this level?
Wow, when I was a kid, um, he was one of the first guys and he excelled at it.
Mm-hmm.
He made the NFR in '76,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to his clinics. Excuse me.
Yep.
He had a couple clinics at Barry Qualms. We'd already been going there and getting on practice bulls.
Right. Right.
So then when I took my card, I didn't know anybody really out west. So I called him, and he was living by Brooks.
Yeah.
8 hours, right?
Yeah.
8 hours later, you'd get to his place, and then you go to a
Dang.
rodeo, right?
Yep.
And then I got to meet other guys, the Jimmy Finkbeiners and like all the guys,
Mhm.
eh? Yeah. So then it made it easier to connect up, and then I got my PRCA card the next year and started rodeoing down south. We went to them winter rodeos,
Right.
and
What was that like
Oh,
being like a small town Saskatchewan kid, like going around? Like, was it kind of like eye opening, or it was just like you're like something you're comfortable with naturally? Just like, did you ever get homesick? I guess is where I'm going with this.
yeah. Well, I never was gone like months at a time. You know,
Right.
we are always back. I was always connected with the ranch at home,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to. I mean, I took it upon. I was going to try and do this. If I couldn't make money at it, that was the conversation I had with my parents. If
Right.
I can't make money at this, I'm not going to do it anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
fortunately, I was able to keep ahead of the bankers, so
Keep the
we
tax
did
man
that.
away. Yeah.
Yeah. So 12 years later, that's how long I had my pro card.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So it was
So when did you make your first CFR?
1984.
1984. So what changed in 1984 to move into the top 12? What was kind of
It
the
was top
tipping
10 back
the top
then.
top 10?
If it
Yeah.
was top 12, I would have made it 3 more
Oh,
times.
really?
Yeah, I come close 3 other times,
When did it switch
500
to
bucks
top
short.
12?
Oh, I have no
Oh,
idea,
not
but it's probably like maybe in the
dang.
early 2000s, maybe.
Okay, so top, so it's even more competitive than at that point with just the
Yeah,
top
and
10.
it was, and not only that, like all the Canadian rodeos were getting every tough bull rider that was on the like Tough Hedeman,
Mm-hmm,
Jim
mm-hmm,
Sharp, Clint Bronger, all them guys come to every Canadian rodeo.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Not everyone, but if there was a big one, then they'd still go to the 5 other ones or whatever connected, and
Right.
so
But
you had to beat them all the time
yes,
too.
I
So
I heard you saying it yesterday how there's like you get like 10 of the top 15 guys like every weekend in the world come into the Canadian race. So that's even another layer on top of the good Canadian guys you got going on. So it
yeah,
would have been like really, really tough to crack that top 10. So
yeah.
what kind of clicked for you that year? Your first
The
1984, your
first
first.
year I made it, I think being around them kind of guys,
Yeah.
and I guess the same as always, it is, you know, you get the opportunity to get on the right kind of bulls,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a pretty good percentage of bulls that I rode, and yeah, we cracked it. It was right at the tail end of the season. It was 3 of us. You know how
Oh,
it
really?
gets, how it
Yeah,
clusters
yeah,
up at the back,
yeah.
eh? And I got real lucky, and they had a rodeo in Penticton. It was the first year that they had
Oh,
it there,
cool.
and I went out there and won it, and then come back and Craven. It was first year they had one there too. That same weekend I won
Mm-hmm.
it, so
Dang.
jumped into like 8th or something like
Wow.
that. So yeah, it was a pretty exciting time.
Well, then what was it like going to CFR for the first time? I always love hearing the story of like it's such a big moment, and then you get there, and what was the first feeling at round one of the CFR when you first made it?
Uh, my memory of it was a little overwhelming,
Right.
almost like I had a pretty good bull to get on for my first one of Northcott's. What they call him, Convict was his name,
Oh,
and he
yeah.
was kind of like it was Sweet Pen. It's one of the ones you couldn't stub a toe on, but yeah, I remember just it was just like none of the veterans took me aside and just said breathe, you know,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
take it easy, you'll be fine or whatever. So I figured that out on my own, but I did ride my first bull and I had a really good first
Oh,
finals.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that's what be like getting that first one down is going to be such a big like relief almost, like just being okay,
I
got that out of the way.
belong.
I belong. I
I
can do it. I
belong.
proved
Yeah,
myself. Yeah, that's
yeah.
cool.
And it was like the prize money there was when you look back on it, was embarrassing. Eh? Like
Right.
it won like $250 to win fourth.
Wow.
The first place played 800. But
Jeez.
there was that was back when Wagner shows were a big sponsor, and they give
Okay.
a $500 bonus, so it's 1,300 if you won the round.
Wow. So what did you
But
end up with? So what were your season earnings that year at the after the CFR? Do you remember?
after the CFR,
Yeah. Are
like
you?
even with the so I placed, I won 3/4 and a first, and I won
Damn.
$1,700.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's not even last hole at the
no,
CFR
no, it's
nowadays.
great to see
100%. Yeah.
how it's evolved,
Yeah, again, it's a
and
different time. Like money's worth different
yeah,
now, but just
yeah,
it's crazy to think that you guys are doing the same. We're doing the same thing back then as they are now,
yeah.
and it's 1,700 bucks.
But
You have to
10,000 in the standings was pretty substantial
right.
then, you
Yeah, I
know, and
guess
that's probably, I
because
can't remember what, probably somewhere in there,
yeah.
and I bought a lot.
Well, then so going into to the 85 season, did you feel any added pressure after making your first CFR? Or was it you kind of
Mm,
where
I
what
got
was
married
okay?
in 85, and everybody was like, well, that's a jinx, you know. I was like, bullshit, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
But, I did just miss out by $500, somewhere in there,
right.
and can't really tell you what made the difference, but 86, I missed it again, same scenario. and 87 went back, missed 88. I can't remember why it happened,
Yeah.
but after that it was 89, 90, 91, and 92
Dang.
back.
You
And
got
that was
one
when
of
I rode bulls the best.
the best.
I was at the
So
top.
how old would you have been in that, like during that era?
30, well, yeah, 31,
So you
32.
you find you just like matured like on like the
I
road
guess, and I
side
figured
or
I I never really was very really talented.
right?
Kind of always had to make up it on grit and try and what have you. And I started putting on some clinics, to be honest, and
Okay.
helping guys local.
Yep.
And by doing that, it helped me, I think, in my mind, break it down how simple it is to
Interesting.
ride.
Yep.
You rode bulls.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not difficult. You just got to do it right.
Yes. Yes.
And you got to,
Yeah.
and the biggest thing is you have to be very, you got to put your heart in. You got to,
You can't half-ass it. You got to
you
full
can't
ass
half
it.
as you're all in, and you got to try your ass off every time.
Mhm.
And it's disheartening to see some of that goes on today, where guys, they don't realize how much, if they just put even an ounce more effort, they'd have be a lot more
Win a
productive.
lot more money too,
Yeah, a
right?
lot
Like
more
it's
money won, and
that's
and
interesting. So you think so that really helped kind of move the needle to get that more consistency, and then it was just maybe was it just that maturity. It's because you don't really hear of guys like hitting 30 in bull riding and then
getting better.
getting better, right?
Yeah.
There's only a few guys
So
that happens to.
So I've been married since '85, and we had a couple kids, and I talked. My wife and I are very close on that kind of stuff, Leanne, and I talked to her about. I said I think I'm going to retire after the end of '91 finals.
Yep.
And she goes, "Really? I don't think I don't think you want to retire." And I said, "No, I think I should, and maybe I don't. Whatever. It's probably the right thing to do."
Right.
She goes, "It is." She says, "You might as well enter exhibition because you could enter the first rodeo of the year on your last year's card."
Right. Right.
And maybe you can still do that. I don't know, but
Yeah.
so I entered it because they had 10,000 added. It was a new deal at Agribition,
Oh, okay.
and I fucked up and I won first. Yeah, yeah. There was
God darn it! I won
$4,500 on the
Yeah.
standing. So I said, well, I'm gonna buy my card
Mhm.
and ease around. You know, I'm not gonna rodeo hard, and if it comes easy, I'll go to. So I made the CFR, like 25 rodeos or something
Dang,
like
that's
that.
awesome.
Yeah, and then the next fall, I said, well, I guess I'll land to Regina. That's where I had my first pro rodeo was Regina. And I
Okay.
said, I'll just retire there, eh?
Yep.
So I entered, split first.
Yeah,
Somebody's trying to tell me something here.
Yeah.
So I did the same thing, just kind of eased around, didn't rodeo that hard, and made the CFR again.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was probably should be not doing, because I never really had any kind of a serious injury riding bulls.
Right. Right.
So it's like maybe Father Time's catching up on me. Maybe I should just quit while I'm ahead.
Yeah.
And so I did.
Well, that's the thing too. Is like not many people get that opportunity to like choose when to pull the plug on it and go and
Oh, I've
fight
seen
free,
that
right?
time and time again. How many of my buddies didn't get the choice?
Right.
And I can remember because for 12 years, you've seen a lot of them come and go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember saying a lot of them would come up to me and say, "When do you think a guy should retire?
Mhm.
Like when is it right, eh?" And I said, "I'll tell you the truth. When you ask me that question, it's time."
That's makes sense. Like
And
really.
most of them looked at it and said, "Yeah, I guess."
Mhm.
Because why else would you be asking the question?
Because at that point you're half-assing it, like we were talking before. Like if you already have that thought in your mind,
Yeah,
you're already
yeah,
it's
you're
already over.
probably already on the way out
Damn.
anyway. But
Well, so before we move on from your career, Jimmy, let's talk about some of the highlights. Are there any rides that stand out, or your first pro rodeo win? Can you tell us a bit about that stuff from your career, some of the big
well,
moments?
I guess highlights. I don't know. Like, so actually the first pro rodeo that I got into, because at that time you'd buy your permit and you'd enter them and always get the slot.
Right.
And it was like you knew bulls that you're not going to win nothing anyway. So
No.
I just end up. I only ended a half dozen because it was like, that's when there was quite a few pro rodeos in Saskatchewan.
Right.
So I never actually went, but then I got into the perf in Agribition, and I showed up there and I won split third and fourth, and it was like, I guess maybe I can make
it
it
happen,
at this in this circle, and so that was a big win. It wasn't a win-win, but it was probably my biggest check that I
At that
at
point.
that point, yeah. And then oh, there was we had lots of I don't know, high points, wins. Um, Down in the States, I guess the best bull ride I ever had is I it's an interesting story in the aspect that I got a chance to buddy that winter with Dan Lowry,
Okay.
who was in my mind a legend in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
not only for his bull riding abilities, but his ability to how to enter and how to get there, and he was a driving mother, right? And I was beyond my. He phoned me up out of the blue and he says, "I heard you're looking for a buddy for the winter rodeos." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, have
Let's
you got a
go.
car?" And I said, "Yes, I do. I got a '76 New Yorker." And he goes, "That's perfect." He says, "Let's buddy." I was like,
Let's
"Ooh,
go.
yeah, great." Anyway, we're down there, and at that time, the all the money contractors that are out there now in the PRCA, that hadn't really happened yet.
Okay.
But there was a guy by the name of Rudy Vela. He was investing a lot of money in bulls, and I don't know if the rules changed or whatever, but he was able to go to some of them big rodeos without a full um, association card or
Right.
whatever. I don't know how he angled it, but
Right.
anyway, he was buying all these good bulls from every contractor, and in that era there was S7 Savage 7 of Steiner's,
Right.
and they were just on the edge of selling out, and he had won the Bull of the Year so that was 83, yeah, 83. He'd won it. So then 84, we show up at San Antone, and I've got a bull called S7 of Vela's, not Steiner's. And I said to Dan, I said, S7, that's not that. He goes, no, this is like the different contract. This is Vela, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know that was actually the Savvy
The
7.
Bull of the Year.
They had just bought him.
Oh.
So I get on him and I ride him, not
Not
like
knowing.
Dan didn't tell me because that wasn't going to help me at all.
Right.
If you're getting on Bull of the Year,
Yeah.
and I fucked up and rode him
Again, once again.
yeah. So that was a highlight.
Dang.
Yeah.
How instrumental was that winter traveling around with Dan? Like, it must have helped your confidence and even just learning how to rodeo probably so much.
Yeah.
Eh?
Yeah. No, that was huge. And a lot of guys when they're coming now, they'll try and find someone like that you can learn how, like, where you should be entering and why you should be there on Saturday, not Sunday.
Right.
Some contractors will feature their best stock on Saturday nights. Some of them want it there the last perf on Sundays, and so many angles, right? It was an interesting time of my life. Yeah.
It's cool because I talked to Richie earlier today, and he like kind of said the same thing of like just learning how to rodeo and then like sharing that with the next generation. It's kind of interesting. It's cool to see how that it always just no matter what generation it is, it's like always kind of the same steps, and it's so important to know that stuff because you go to so many rodeos, and especially back then too, like not even having like Google Maps or whatever, you just have like, your Rodeo Sports News, and you're picking where you're going, right? Like that's wild.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
for sure.
one more thing before we move on from your career, talk about some of the other guys you travel with. You mentioned Jim Finkbeiner and some of those other guys, but who are some of the other standout guys that you surrounded yourself with back in the day?
Well, coming from where I was, I couldn't be too fussy.
That's true.
Staying in Canada. My brother rodeoed.
Okay.
Don.
Yeah.
So we traveled a bit, not always, but Don McLeod was out of Brandon, Manitoba at the time. He made the CFR like, I don't know, 10, 12, maybe more in the bareback riding. And so I hooked up with him a bit sometimes. And then, but when I wasn't going back and forth or going into the States or whatever, there was a variety of them, a couple of the Johanssons, Sleepy Slosher, buddied with him, and Finkbeiner, and actually back in Saskatchewan, Daryl Symington.
Oh yeah.
He was out of Asquith.
Charlie Bear, did you ever run around?
Charlie Bear, I took him under my wing a few times. I didn't actually. We're not going to get into Charlie Bear stories. I nicknamed him the Don't Care Bear, by the way. He was like, I don't know, 10 years younger. He was just a kid.
Right.
And he needed a lot of learning. But yeah, he jumped in with us a lot. Yeah.
Well, and I just know like from hearing stories of Charlie, but he seemed like he was a talented guy and like.
Full on natural talent,
Mhm.
and yeah, he was a lot
So
of fun.
So what are some of the things that stand out from like the travel back then? I know it's a lot. It was like I just mentioned. It's a lot. It was a lot different. Like you don't have Google Maps. You it's like such a different aspect of what we know today. So can you shed some light on like what that was like, the travel side of rodeo?
Um, I guess when you were doing trying to get to many as you could in
Hmm.
through the States and back into Canada or whatever, they had the 4-man buddy, which you would try to utilize that if you could,
Hmm.
and if you're all night drives, hell, we'd play uh, uh, with the peg, or what do you
Oh, cribbage.
cribbage, have cribbage tournaments, and
While you guys are driving.
while you're driving, and if you lost, well, there'd be two at a time playing,
Right,
and
right.
if you lost, then you had to drive,
Oh, okay.
and the other guys. That was one way you pass time,
Yeah, I guess that
or
that's.
play pitch.
I don't know what that game
Yeah,
is.
it's a game that guys play that if you're driving, they'll cheat on you.
It's a good to
Never
lose.
cost you a lot of money, but
Yeah, yeah.
it did pass a lot of the time.
Oh yeah, I guess that'd be the biggest thing is
It's a lot of
like
the fun.
nowadays you have like podcasts and all different sorts
Yeah.
of things to keep you occupied, but back then you
No.
just had to visit with your buddies
Yeah.
and
Interesting fact. So I buy these old Dodge cars, like
yep.
the mid '70s, and I could buy them for $500, and I'd just park it until the one I was driving was giving me trouble.
Yep.
And then I'd use it for parts or whatever. But through the years, I had quite a few of them, and I bought this '76 Cordoba,
Okay.
2-door, bucket seats, like blood red leather interior. It was a beauty.
Hmm.
And we looked in the trunk, and there was a 8-track tape or like it had the 8-track,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it only had one tape in it, and it was Meatloaf. And I didn't listen to anything but country, right?
Yeah.
And so Finkmeyer and I were on the Northwest run, and you go to Pendleton and
Hmm.
all them ones, Filer, and anyway, you couldn't get no radio, right?
No, yep,
So I
yeah.
said, stick this tape in, eh? So we listened to Meatloaf like for 36 hours straight,
Knew all
and
the words by the end of
yeah,
it.
and it ended up being pretty good. And
That's funny because looking back on like Jesse and Brandy's wedding, like hearing that when they danced the Meatloaf and stuff, that's funny. That's
that's
awesome.
why though, because
Yeah.
Jesse asked me, he says, "What was some good rock bands back in your day?" And I didn't really know any. I said, "Meatloaf's pretty good."
Just,
No, he's a Meatloaf
he loves them, man.
fiend, right?
Oh man, that's so awesome. Just from that 136-hour trip. Oh,
Coincident, yeah.
yeah, that's great. Okay, Jimmy, I want to ask. I did some recon with Jesse, and I want to ask you two more things on your career before we move on to the Buccaneer side of things. But it's kind of funny because we just put out a story about yak riding in the Canadian Pro News a couple months ago. But he says you have a fun story about riding a yak in Houston. I want to hear that one.
No, it wasn't in Houston.
Was in Houston? Okay,
No.
okay. I'm just going off of what Jesse said, but yeah, tell us about your yak riding adventures.
Well, the only yak that I ever had an opportunity to get on, um, we were rodeoing down south, and Harry Vold come up to us, and he said, "Do you guys want to ride a yak?" At that time, they did the big Edmonton Super. They called it the Super Rodeo.
Right. Yep.
In March. He says, we're planning a big Canada versus US each night after the bull riding, and the first guy to ride gets $5,000. It's like, yeah, sign me up.
Yeah.
So there was me and Sleepy, and well, you know what? I can't remember all the Canadians that got in it, but anyway, I entered for the first performance because he said whoever rides first is going to win the 5,000, right? So I thought, well, I got a better chance if I go in the first. Little strategy there, right?
Yeah.
But I'd never been on a bull, or I'm sorry, a yak.
Yeah.
But have you ever talked to anybody that has, or seen one of them or whatever? They got the floating vertebrae, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so their vertebrae on their back looks like almost like a horse, like a wither, like that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But when you pull your rope down, it just floats and goes down.
Wow.
So it's like weird, because then you can't keep your rope there.
Right.
And that's why they had a high percentage of buck-offs, because then when they turned back, the rope would start sliding back
Right.
because
I
you couldn't
gotcha.
get it tight enough. So they're kind of weird that
Yeah,
way.
no doubt.
And some guys would pull it back further and in hopes that because then it wouldn't move
Right.
or
Well, then
whatever.
you're
But
probably close to being in the middle of them at that point, right? Like,
yeah,
oh.
yeah, and then they just had a lot of different moves to them. But hey, I told it in great length on my opportunity when I got inducted.
Yeah.
I said, "Can I tell any story?" And they said, "You can tell whatever story you want. It's your day, right?"
Yeah.
So I told this yak riding story, but I won't go into quite as in depth as I did then. But it was hilarious. Really, it ended up. But so I get there and I got to get on this yak and I'm trying to think of how to pull it, and so I decided that I'd let it go back where it's going to anyway and pull it tight and somewhere along the line somebody had thought that maybe nobody will ride.
Right.
Like, how are we going to determine the winner? That's they come up with it. We'll time them.
Oh, so longest.
Whoever rides the longest will win if nobody rides.
Right.
Like if after the first performances, one guy rode him for 6 seconds or whatever, well, you'd be leading it or whatever. So anyway, I get on him and when the gate opens, instead of just turning out and bucking, he reared up on his hind legs and he did this kind of a belly roll into my hand and then just turned back right in the chute, and just drilled me right there. Couldn't get bucked off any quicker, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, kind of embarrassed,
Yeah.
I'm Canada, right?
Yeah.
Representing Canada.
Yeah.
And John Dodds was judging. And he's a legend, right? He was at that time in his career, he was judging, and he had a big smile on his face, and he goes, slaps me on the back. He says, "Oh, go get your rope." He says, "Don't feel so bad." He says, "I've got you on the stopwatch. You rode him for 0.1 seconds. You're winning this deal."
You're winning. Oh, that's
Yeah, so
perfect.
that was funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy to think that people were getting on yaks and stuff. That's wild. Another one Jesse told me to ask you about was the driving through Compton story.
The
So
driving through Compton
yeah,
story.
I don't know. That's all he told me. So
Yeah, no, I'm at so we were at a rodeo in LA, obviously.
yeah.
And that's when Charlie Sampson was real big. It might have been the year after he won the world. And we're good friends with him. And I was traveling with Kevin Rockabar.
Okay.
And he come up to us, Charlie did, and he says, "I'm throwing a party at my mom's place and would like you guys to come after." So we jumped in the car with a bunch of Prunies, is what they called the California bull riders, right? Pruney locals, and we're all headed over there, and I hadn't been around black people very much, and I seen this guy walking down the street, and I yelled out the window, "Hey man," or something like that, "bro," or something really kind of dumb. And them guys were like, "You're gonna get us killed." I was like, "Oops,
oops, oh, sorry,
oopsies."
my bad, sorry guys.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Okay, I want to shift some gears into the stock contractor side. So you retired from riding bulls. Was it always stock contracting was the next move for you, or did it take a few years to kind of figure that out?
Right. So our family was in the PMU business,
Right.
where you breed a lot of mares, and we were breeding close to 200 mares.
Wow.
And so I was trying to get into a niche market, and looking at it was like there were so many guys that were breeding quarter horses. Like there was 400 ranchers in the business.
Wow.
And there's quite a few of them doing quarter horses and purebred drafts or whatever.
Yep.
And I thought, why not rodeo horses?
Yeah.
And I mean, being naive and thinking that, well, you know what, you get some good genetics and people want to buy it and what have you. And so I had, because I was the bull riding director in Canada at that time.
Oh, okay.
Had made pretty good ties with Winston Bruce of Calgary.
Right.
And had a conversation with him. And he said, I'd be happy to let you use a stud. And he give me some options. And he had a son of at that time one of their most famous bloodlines was the Rocket, right? So Cindy Rocket was the mare, and she was bred to a stud of Reg Kessler's, and had some real significant bloodlines there too as well.
Mhm.
So I thought, yeah, I'd use him, and so I got him from Winston. I used him for 5 years,
Oh wow.
and then I kept back all the fillies, and we kept some geldings, and started playing around, seeing if we could buck them and then sell them, kind of like what's happening today.
Right.
A lot of guys are breeding them, and like I said, I was kind of naive about the business. You've been around it, and when I was rodeoing, I always paid attention to the horse riding part of it,
Right.
and talking to contractors and what have you, and so it wasn't foreign to me at all. But essentially, what I learned after about 10 years of breeding them and not selling a lot, but I did sell some as weanlings,
Mhm.
that if I really wanted to do success in it, I'd have to prove them.
Right.
And it was hard to find someone that just wanted to, they're not going to lease an unknown horse, or they're not going to,
No.
they didn't really, and I get it today. Why would they want to, even if you give it to them, right? Because they've got some of their own to do,
Right. Yeah.
or they don't want to be embarrassed because your horses look terrible, but they're the ones that look bad, right?
Because yeah, they're trusting you to bring
Yeah,
bring it for them.
exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
So we'd always had a practice pen of bulls around,
Right.
and we started breeding. My brother and we started breeding, keeping the heifers and breeding them again, doing what. So 40 years ago, we were doing what a lot of young guys are doing now.
Mhm.
Trying to build a. So we had that because we wanted them for practice bulls, and then we leased them out a little bit. So we had bulls already, and had kind of a nucleus of young, mostly mares, and we decided that we would start contracting.
And that was prime time, right? The birth of prime time.
1987, Leanna and I started that, and
Was that the year Jesse was born? What year?
no, Jesse was born 10 years before that.
Before that?
87.
Oh, 87. Oh, 87.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So he was just 10, and Paige was just young. Dawson was born too. And
Right.
so we had all the kids already, and I'd retired. So I really was out of the rodeo for a couple of years there.
Okay,
From
okay.
93 was the last year I went. And then so this is 97. And then we got 4 rodeos that first year, and we played around with that for a few years. And then we started having some success with them crosses that we started out with. At that time, actually, I didn't mention, so at Harvey Northcott, I got to be good friends with him.
Mhm.
We were on the board together. And in the stories that I had with Winston, he was always talking about that he wanted to make a bucking horse that was a pattern,
Mhm.
that the cowboys could. It would make it a spurring contest, like they'd all be like bucking machines.
Right. Right.
It was his quote, really, is they're just bucking machines. Whoever spurs the best is going to win. And when I looked at that, and thinking that that's really what I put into my start of my herd,
Mhm.
was what he was building. And I started thinking, like, I want to make sure that they have a lot of heart,
Mhm.
that they're going to last, and they're going to have, you want to buck some guys off too and stuff. Again, I'm learning this as I'm going along, but I was talking to Harvey about it, wanting to get a stud with some heart. Because, well, I might have a deal for you, he said. So he had this stud called Devil's Triangle.
Okay.
That was on Come Off the Blood Indian Reserve, and he'd had quite a bit of success with him as a bucking horse. He'd been to the NFR and top horse at the CFR, and I'd seen him bucking that, but I hadn't really paid that much attention to him. So at Falkland that spring, which is in May,
Mhm.
Harvey says, "Come over and you're going to watch this stud buck today." And we went and looked in the back pens, and I said, "Harvey, do you know that horse is lame, like on more than one foot?" Because he's real hard on himself.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
real wild and real mean, and he'd been packed for several years.
Right. Yeah.
He wouldn't lose that, right? And he goes, "Yeah, well, actually, he's lame on 3 legs." I said, "Well, you're not bucking him then." He goes, "Oh yeah."
Oh yeah.
And I don't remember who got on. He bucked him off.
Yeah.
And I thought, "Yep, that's heart."
Yeah.
So I made a deal with him, and I used him for a couple of years.
Mhm.
And then in the time frame where I used him and then sent him back, a crop of colts that he had got off them before I got him ended up having a horse called Wyatt Earp,
Oh no
who
way.
ended up being a world champion.
Yeah.
And ended up being the sire of Graded Coconut. So that was almost really good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt.
Kind of blind luck, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like even Harvey didn't know that he was that good a producer.
Right.
He just wanted to help me out, and I said I wanted Harton. So essentially the cross of those two was the beginning of my success.
Right.
And I was not that naive. I knew that it would take a couple generations, right, of whatever.
Yeah.
So I kept he was a grandson to both of those studs, like on top and bottom.
Yep.
And I called him Speak of the Devil. That was the start of our success. He was the sire to Mucho Dinero
Oh, okay. Okay.
that we ended up selling to Wayne, and he
Yep.
won Canada twice and been to the NFR
How many times?
seven,
Yeah.
8 times.
It's still good. It's still still pretty good horse to
He's
get
still a
on.
really good horse.
Yeah,
There were
yeah.
88 on him the other day.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that horse, backing up just a little bit, the CPR had the foresight to come up with I guess, a means of allowing a person in my position to become part of the CPRA
Right.
without having a full contractor card. Because we tried that angle, and don't want to get into it, it's difficult.
For sure.
And so they invented a permit rough stock
Yep.
card. And so we capitalized off that. And then we made good relationship with Wayne and have done business with him for, I don't know, 10
Long
years
time
or
now,
long
yeah.
time, long time. It's worked out really well for us. And that helps us expose our horses to the pros. And essentially that's the biggest marketing that you can get is
Yeah.
by being involved with the pros. They see that they can win with them cowboys,
Mhm,
and,
mhm.
so
Well, and even talk a bit about like what Jesse's doing now with like it's basically like an archive of all of like the family trees of all your horses. Now you can go back and look at videos and outs and which horse like which specific bloodlines. Like
it's
how is that like changed it for you guys?
so I've still got the original, what I call my Bible, right, where I've
Yeah.
got
Yep.
all the every pedigree, and it's all wrote down and kept
Mhm.
track of it, and uh, and that's this. Jesse's involving the next a better way of doing
Yeah.
exactly what I'm doing, but now it's all on computer,
Mhm.
and then we're keeping we're like when we dummy the colts, uh, that is part of our development of them.
Right.
Like everybody I guess in the bucking horse business is doing some dummying at some level, and they're, in my opinion, are doing it for different reasons.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
all have our own reasons. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong.
100%. Yeah.
And then the way you evaluate it is interesting. And essentially the for us it's getting the horse introduced to the rodeo environment as
Right.
early as you can.
Mhm.
So we do them once or twice before they're a year old, and then the ones that are showing a lot of potential, we just kind of leave them alone till they're old enough or big enough for a cowboy to get on them.
Yep.
3-year-old maybe, and I guess we've kind of got to the point now because of, I guess, of the ability to keep it on a computer.
Yeah.
So all them trips that we done is something I wished I could have had that back at the
Right.
start and go
Yeah.
back and say, so this horse here, Mucho Dinero.
Yep.
All I got is I wrote down that I marked him, say a 20 when we dummied him, right?
Yeah.
So vague, right?
Right. Yep.
And I didn't. So after thinking about it and kind of, hashing it out and talking about it, we've come up with a system that's still not proven, but we hope that will help us to evaluate them better. Where
Mhm.
instead of just marking a 20 down, we got a scale, 5 different things that we watch in slow motion, and then we evaluate them and score them
Okay.
on what they're doing.
Yeah.
First trip, second trip, see where the improvements are there, and hopefully, we're hoping that by watching that horse is showing us something that will tell us that not only that he's got a bright future,
Right.
or that essentially they can't all make it, right?
No. No.
And so the sooner I know that I don't think they're going to make a bucking horse, then I break them, or starting to drive horses and
Mhm.
trying to make and repurpose them
Make
basically.
something out of
Yeah,
them.
make
Yeah.
them so there's value in all kinds of horses, right?
100%. Yeah.
Except for rejects.
Yeah.
Nobody wants
No.
rejects. So trying to make a market out of that.
Yep.
And we've had some success with that. We've got a lot of roans, so that's a popular color right now. So
Right.
we've got some that are sold as saddle horses or outfitter horses, or we're making some teams now. That's
Cool.
kind of a new thing that I learned in the
Yeah.
last couple of years is being a
Driving.
teamster and driving them, and eventually going to have it where maybe can do all the chores with them and stuff.
Yeah. So
Kind of cool.
how soon can you tell a horse is going to be a standout from this system, or have you guys is it still kind of
And we're about the third year in it.
third year?
When I get home, we'll probably have like when we get an opportunity to sit down and really look at things. And that I'm
Yeah.
really curious on the 955 Enigma.
Right. Yeah, that's a
They
cool
were
horse.
87 and a half here at Pinoca yesterday, and it's going to be interesting just kind of look at her videos and how we scored her and how we did that, because she'll be that same first age group. She's just turning 5 now.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's definitely a learning curve.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I reinvented the wheel, or
No.
I'm just
It's
telling you.
interesting though.
It's
Like,
interesting how we're trying to do, just trying to, I guess, uh, try to perfect so that you know the best you can about each animal.
right. Well, and there's so much time has to be put into like one bucking horse from the time it's born to the time you can actually haul it
Time and
or
money
whatever,
and-
right? So
yeah.
you can like dial that in a little bit and make a system like that. It might save a lot of people time or yourself time and money and all that type of stuff. It's really interesting. So who are some of the other standouts you got in your pen right now? You talked about Enigma and then whatever. Do you have any other up and coming horses that we should be looking out for in 2024?
Well, here still at Pinoca, we've had I guess 4 out so far, 6 out, and they've all cracked 80, so that's good.
That's pretty good.
Or better.
Yeah, yeah.
Mexican Tattoo at Tanner Ross was 85
Oh
and a
yeah,
half
that's a good horse too.
on that one. And then we got Cowboy Project still coming. He's out more the next day.
Okay,
That's a bareback horse.
Okay.
They've been good. They've had a lot of success with him.
nice.
And yeah, it's an interesting story on the Cowboy Project.
Yeah.
So our neighbors that I help quite a bit with when they're doing ranch work or whatever, because I don't have cattle anymore, but
Yeah.
help them out when I can. And they've got young kids that are cowboys, and they had the misfortune of having one of their sons get some form of cancer,
Oh, okay.
and they had a lot of. I mean, he's good now.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong,
right,
but
right.
they had a lot of trials and tribulations with that,
Yeah.
and learned that there's some families that can't afford it when they're doing that. So they went to the. I guess they initiated the idea of this called Cowboy Project,
Right.
and they make clothing and they sell it online and try to make money for whatever money it makes. It's used for to help families so it's really such a great cause.
Yeah.
And they're really great people.
Nice.
The Berglund family from Kennedy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, Jared and Brittany.
Right.
Excuse me. So I just named a horse. I just thought it was
It is a cool name.
such a cool story and a cool name.
Yeah.
We named that, and it kind of stuck it on a horse that I felt was going to probably excel, right?
Yeah.
Which we do. We save them names,
Right. Do you have like a list of like a book of names somewhere hidden?
We do.
Can you share one that's like no, I don't want you. No, I can't do that.
Can't do
Because yeah, it's top
I'm not
secret
gonna
list. You're not gonna tell me your list.
that.
So on top of all this stuff, you with prime time, you are still putting on your schools. And you're finding ways to get back to rodeo. You're producing rodeos in Saskatchewan, and like I said, putting on these schools. How is that? How rewarding is that to you, or how do you find the time to like fit all this stuff in? I like it can't be easy.
The extracurriculars, like the school that we do and what have you. So I will give kudos to my family, and it kind of got really brought to the forefront when COVID was on. Like here we are, 35 years of breeding bucking horses, and 75% of our horses that nobody in the world knows yet because they're not developed to the point where they're
Yeah.
valuable, right? So you know what you got, but you can't really. So what are you supposed to do? You got 2 years where you can't make any money. Are you supposed to just take them and sell them at the auction?
Yeah.
No, we said we got to hang on. We got to create ways of doing stuff, and so my family, they all stepped in and helped whichever way they could, and one of them was as they put it, Dad, you got to quit being a rodeo philanthropist, and we'll try and put these schools on, get kids started. It's good for us for bucking young horses, and so that's when they started the non-for-profit called Rodeo Canada Rodeo Development Canada.
Okay.
And it's not really just for rough stock. It's like essentially it's made for Any event that's struggling with entries, like if it
Mhm.
ever comes where like steer wrestling kind of went in a lull there for a
Right.
while, it's kind of come back a little bit, but they've approached even some of the like Jesse lives in Bowden. Bowden's known for steer wrestlers,
Mhm.
and approach them if they need help to put on schools or whatever that they want to be a part of that. But one of the advantages of non-for-profits, you can go to a sponsor, and they're more eager to help that cause, is because it is a non-for-profit. Is
Right.
for me to go, they look at it. Well, I'm just trying to make a profit from it, right, or whatever. So that's helped a lot.
Yep.
We're not trying to make money. We just trying to help kids get started basically and learn
Mhm.
the right way. And so that clinics, we had our third.
Yeah.
Richie comes and
Yeah.
instructs.
Super cool. And like Oren came down and
Oren popped in this year, and it was just so good. He's like Oren, if you know him, he's very quiet
yes.
and it's
Yeah.
very soft spoken, and he just blew me away. Like he just stood up in front of them kids and told them what they need to hear, and was very, very good for them. And Richie, of course, is very, very vocal that way too, and very positive. You know,
Mhm.
how you've seen it yourself when you're around that pro
Oh
circle.
yeah.
It just the positivity that comes out of it.
It just
Talking to
radiates off those
yeah,
guys.
yeah, nobody talks negative,
No.
and you try to get that into the kids' heads. And Brady did when he does our bronc riding.
Oh
He's
yeah.
real good with kids, and he's had a good successful in
Hundred
the
percent.
bronc riding himself.
It's good to put that time back into it too, because in the long run, you need that next group of kids to come through for your bucking horse business to be
Sure,
successful and all of it, right? Like all kind of the same cogs in the wheel. So being able to start something like that just gonna help rodeo out in the long run.
yeah, and there's a lot of since I mean the COVID was the darkest of the dark, really,
Yeah.
for everybody, and for the
Mm-hmm.
rodeo business for sure. And then when the doors opened up, it's unbelievable how uh, it's been so positive.
Yeah.
Crowds, people
Oh
were just
man.
eager to do something.
Yeah.
And I remember telling each of my committees is like, you got people here that have never been to a rodeo
Yeah.
before. You make sure they have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Do whatever you can, and you'll have them for life. And now I think the novelty of being able to do things again is kind of, but not at these rodeos.
No.
These people come back because
Man,
they enjoyed it. Good beer gardens
oh,
and fun,
everything.
and
Yeah. It's good. And like in the hotel today, I was going to my room and this group of people from Hamilton, Ontario, it was their fourth Ponoka Stampede. And the first time they came, they just stumbled upon it. They're visiting Alberta, going to Banff and Calgary, came up to Ponoka, went to the rodeo one day, and they're hooked on it. They come back just for the Ponoka Stampede. Like, it's
yeah,
cool
cool.
what a positive experience in a rodeo can do, right? Like you get people who would never dream of going to a rodeo coming back to a small town in central Alberta every year just to come and watch.
Yeah, well, this is easily, I'll call it the best rodeo in Canada.
Yeah.
I'm not picking on anybody.
No,
There's
no.
a lot of hardworking committees out there, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that put everything they got into it. It's just they have the ability to get the prize money.
Hmm.
They have the ability to get the right stock. There's so many guys coming and going here with stock,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we're privileged to be able to compete here
Hmm.
with our stock. And I think just because we're affiliated with Bold, basically,
Hmm.
Wayne Bold, so we get to come here. We kind of just play a little bit every day.
Yeah.
We have bareback and a bronc every day, and I'm on the work crew, so it makes sense being here.
I get to like see old friends and visit and sit around and have some
Pinoka is
beers
a
and
melting pot. Like it's just everybody through the week. There's always a new friend that
yeah.
you hadn't seen for 30 years that comes through here, and it's yeah, it's great.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking some time with me this like during this week, Jimmy. I know it's really busy and it's been fun
Yeah,
to hear the story and we'll have to do it again soon. So thanks
yeah,
for joining me. It was awesome.
it was awesome.
Yeah, you betcha.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, right on. Okay.
Welcome back to the short round, everyone. Just want to send a huge thank you out to Jim Lawrence for taking the time to sit down with us. It was great to hear about his bit about his career, a bit about his career in the stock contracting side of things, and it was a fun conversation overall. But Clay, it's kind of I guess it'll be we're already into the weekend as this is coming out, but we got a couple big rodeos on the schedule. We got first of all, let's start off with the next stop on the SMS Pro Tour with the TP Creek Stampede. We got three performances, so starting Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and gonna be some good rodeo action with the what do they call it? 3 days in the wild or 4 days in the wild now?
Yeah, yeah, I saw their website. It's 4 days in the wild there, and it can get wild in TP
Yeah.
Creek. Boy, do they know how to put on a great rodeo. And when I was looking at the money added again, it's a tour rodeo with 8,000 added. They've got equal money on both ends of the team roping, and they got 8,000 in the breakaway. So kudos on them. I mean,
Hmm.
when I actually rode there as a steer rider, and I was a 2002 junior breakaway roping champion of TP Creek.
Nice.
Um, and everything, and it was a good rodeo. But when they made the switch to a pro rodeo, that group that they've got there has just they have continuously improved
Hmm.
and grown, and just really they've got so many good things going on there. They've always had the good old grandstand, but once they built that dance hall, I mean, it just really made things happen. I mean, they've since built a beautiful
Oh
indoor
my
arena.
gosh. Yeah.
Like,
The whole facility up there
and
is so nice, man. It's crazy.
it's just really it's commendable what they've accomplished up there, and continue to grow and reach this level of
Hmm.
being a tour rodeo. It's just it's what you want to see any rodeo get to, and it's
Yeah.
just awesome.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be exciting. And you can catch all the action from TP Creek on the Cowboy Channel Plus app, I'm pretty sure. All our tour rodeos are streamed on there. So if you want to catch any of the action, you can tune in from there. Oh yeah, the TP Terror, that's a funny note. That's a cool thing they do up there where they get some of the novice. I think novice saddle bronc riders get a chance to spend a few $100 if they ride the TP Terror or something like that. I can't remember the exact details.
I
I'm sure.
I I can explain the
Yes, there
details
you go.
because
Yes, get into it, Clay. Tell us about the TP Terror before we move on.
so the TB Terror has just always been a thing there. They used to have the Toro Totter too, which was oof, it was entertaining there, but they eventually retired that. If you've seen the Jackass teeter totter that they had,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the run there. But the TB Terror was something that I had put my name in a couple of times, and then you'll notice I put that Dwayne Kessler and the Kessler family came back to start contracting there in 2013, and I know this because in 2013, I put my name down, and none of us knew what was going to be the TP Terror there. Again, for any of us that have competed at Kessler Rodeos, thinking about what kind of like never seen a person before kind of creature is going to roll out of that back pen and into the chute. So I was the only one to put my name down.
Yeah.
Everybody else didn't want to do it. It was the first perf that Kessler's had that rodeo, and I fell off my bronc and go to Dwayne, and I was like, "Well, it looks like I'm the guy getting on the terror. What is it going to be?" And he looks at me and he says, "It's going to be Country Cat." And I was like, so that went from something completely unknown to something that has been the bareback and saddle bronc horse of the NFR, one that I had made it all the way to the end of the chute gate before being projectile launched in Medicine Hat years before. So suddenly it was kind of a,
It was the
okay,
TP
this,
Terror.
this
Yeah.
is this is something. And so how they have it set up is whoever gets it gets $250 automatically. And you have to try and stay on them, and you got to try and fan them,
Hmm.
and you got to ride them for 10 seconds is the rule. And so I'm and getting on Country Cat, and started what felt like the one of the best rides I've ever made in my career. And
Hmm.
even when I ran into Dwayne last year at the CFR, he still remembered that, and pointed out that was probably the best he'd ever seen me ride too. But about that 6 seconds, I'm suddenly think, oh, I gotta fan this. And I think my free arm got from like out to my where it normally is to about halfway to my hat. And then I ended up right here on my nose. And
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
I go to get my money, and they were like, well, you didn't stay on for 10, you didn't fan them, but that was pretty darn cool. So we're gonna give you half of
Um,
the extra. Because there's if you
yeah,
stay
yeah.
on the rest of it, there was supposed to be another $500.
Oh,
So
awesome.
it was a
That's
good
so
time.
cool. Yeah, it's cool that the Dwayne and the committee does that kind of cool stuff there. They work so hard, like you mentioned, and it's a great rodeo on our schedule. Okay, Clay,
For
we
sure.
got the Bowden Days Pro Rodeo happening this weekend as well. 3 performances running through the weekend. It's another great rodeo on the schedule.
For sure. Bowden, again, this is one that's evolved in a little bit different fashion. Again, they've tried a few different events there, the Bowden and District Ag Society. I can remember riding in that 2013 year at just a non-sanctioned rough stock event that they
Mhm.
held, And over the years, they tried doing a bareback ride in there because you had Kai Marshall and everyone in that area. And since then, they've transitioned into being a pro rodeo. And again, much the same as Benalto, being this close to Calgary and having a couple of evening performances
Mhm.
allows some of those contestants that ability to pop up there quick and get another rodeo under their count and just yeah, it's a great spot for contestants to come up to a little cool little spot just off Highway 2 there. You can see it from the highway there
Yeah.
and just always a good little rodeo grounds. A lot of events they put on there, whether it's high school rodeos or anything else like that. So just good to see them having that rodeo going on.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great weekend of pro rodeo action. But I think it's gonna be the end of the line for us, Clay. It's been a good show and not as much action for us to recap, but we'll pop in next week for the latest episode of the Half Point to recap TP Creek and Bowden once that's all said and done. But yeah, man, thanks for the time. It's been a good show.
You bet.
Right on. This has been episode number 18, 17,
17.
17 of the short round. I'm Wacey Anderson for Clay Creasy. We'll catch you all next time.